He thinks his daughter is at school, but sees her on the street asking for food. And then, Michael Johnson couldn't believe his eyes. His heart raced, his hands trembled on the steering wheel, and a cold sweat ran down his back as he tried to process that impossible scene. His 7-year-old daughter should have been in school at that very moment, but there she was, sitting on the sidewalk on Maple Street in downtown New York City, with her hand outstretched to the hurried passers-by. Little Emily, whom he had left sleeping at home before heading out for another delivery run, was begging for food. The truck skidded when Michael slammed on the brakes with all his might. The sound of tires on asphalt cut through the air, followed by the noise of boxes crashing into each other in the cargo bed. Drivers honked angrily, but he heard nothing except his own heart pounding in his ears. "Emily!" he shouted through the window, but his voice was muffled by the traffic noise. The little girl looked up. For a second, father and daughter stared at each other through the truck's dusty window. Michael saw the terror on her face, the same dread he was feeling at that instant. Then Emily did something that broke his heart into pieces. She jumped up and ran away. "No, wait!" Michael tried to open the door, but it was locked by the seatbelt. By the time he managed to get out of the truck, his daughter had already disappeared into the crowd. People were walking in all directions, a jumble of bodies and noise that swallowed the girl as if she had never been there. Michael ran along the sidewalk, pushing people aside, looking everywhere. "Emily, please come back here." But she had vanished completely. Michael stopped in the middle of the street, panting, feeling his legs go weak. What was happening? How could his daughter be there, in that place, when she should have been safe at school? A driver shouted curses through his window, pointing at the truck stopped in the middle of the lane with its door open. Michael staggered back, still trying to process what he had seen. As he got back into the vehicle, he realized he was shaking so much he could barely hold the steering wheel. He parked illegally in the first spot he found. It didn't matter if he got a ticket, nothing mattered except understanding that madness. He ran back to the spot where he had seen Emily, praying it was all a mistake, a hallucination caused by too many hours awake. But it wasn't. There was the piece of cardboard where she had been sitting. Michael picked up the sign with trembling hands and read the words written in a child's handwriting, "Help, please, I'm hungry." The world spun around him. "Sir, are you feeling sick?" A woman's voice brought him back. Michael turned and saw an elderly lady selling candy from a makeshift stand. She looked at him with concern, holding a paper fan. "The girl," he managed to say. "The girl who was here, did you see her?" "The little one with dark hair?" The woman nodded. "Yes, I saw her. Poor thing, she comes here every day." Every day? Michael felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. "It's been about 3 weeks since she started showing up, always at the same time around 9 in the morning. She stays until about noon, then leaves. Never accepts the candy I offer. Only asks people for real food. 3 weeks. His daughter had been doing that for 3 weeks and he knew nothing about it. Michael felt his throat tighten, his eyes burn. As a father, he was supposed to protect Emily from everything, and he hadn't noticed that something was wrong. "Are you a relative of hers?" the vendor asked. "I'm her father." The word came out heavy, laden with guilt. "Oh, then you need to take better care of your daughter, sir. A child that size on the street." She shook her head in disapproval. Michael didn't answer. He took out his cell phone with trembling fingers and dialed his ex-wife's number, Jessica. She had shared custody of Emily. On the days the girl stayed with her mother, it was Jessica's responsibility to take her to school and pick her up afterward. "Hello?" Her voice sounded from the other end. "Jessica, where are you?" Michael tried to keep his voice firm, but it came out choked. "At work. Why? Did something happen? Where's Emily?" "At school. Where else would she be?" "Michael, what is it? You sound strange." "Don't lie to me," he exploded, making the candy vendor take a step back. "I just saw our daughter begging for food on the street. On the street, Jessica." The silence on the other end was so heavy that Michael thought the call had dropped. Then he heard Jessica's ragged breathing. "That's a lie. I dropped her off at school this morning like I always do." "Then how is she here downtown? How, Jessica?" "I don't know." You must have seen wrong. It must be another child. It was our daughter. Michael felt hot tears stream down his face. She saw me and ran away. She ran from me, Jessica. Why would our daughter run from her own father? Where are you? I'm coming there now. Michael gave her the address and hung up. He sat down on the sidewalk where his daughter had been minutes before and buried his face in his hands. 20 minutes later, Jessica arrived breathless, her eyes red. Where is she? She's gone. She ran off when she saw me. Jessica looked around, desperate, as if Emily would appear at any moment. Then she turned to the candy vendor. Did you see a 7-year-old girl here? Dark, long hair? The same one this gentleman asked about. I did, but she ran off a while ago. You said she comes here every day. Michael stood up. For 3 weeks. Jessica turned pale. 3 weeks? That's impossible. I take her to school every morning. Then call the school. Now. With trembling fingers, Jessica called the office of Lincoln Elementary School. Michael stood beside her, trying to hear the conversation. He saw his ex-wife's expression change from confused to shocked. What do you mean she's not there? I dropped her off at the gate at 7:30. Jessica was almost shouting. You have an obligation to look after her. Michael took the phone from her hand. This is Emily's father. Someone needs to explain to me what is happening. Mr. Johnson, the principal's voice was tense. Emily enters the school normally every day. The problem is that she disappears during recess. What do you mean she disappears? We can't understand it. She is present for the first period roll call. She participates in activities. But when the 9 o'clock recess comes, she vanishes. We thought she was in the bathroom or the library, but you don't check. You don't notice that a 7-year-old child has disappeared. Sir, we have 200 students. She always comes back before the end of classes, so... Michael hung up on the principal, shaking with anger. Jessica had her hands over her face, sobbing. Our daughter has been skipping school to beg for food on the street and no one noticed. What kind of mother am I? It's not just your fault. Michael ran a hand through his hair. I work too much. I'm always traveling. When I'm with her on the weekends, we barely talk properly. They stood there, 2 completely lost adults, not knowing what to do. The candy vendor approached, offering a glass of water to Jessica. Forgive me for butting in, but you need to find out why the girl is doing this. A child doesn't do something like this for no reason. Michael nodded. He had to understand what was going on. The next day he cancelled all his deliveries and hid near the school very early. Jessica took Emily as usual, kissed the girl's forehead, and left for work, not imagining that the father was watching from afar. Emily entered the school normally. Michael waited, sitting on a bench in a small square across the street, his eyes fixed on the gate. At 9:10 in the morning, he saw a small figure climbing the back wall of the school. It was Emily. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. Michael's heart tightened as he watched his daughter jump off the wall with the agility of someone who had done it many times before. She looked both ways, making sure no one saw her, and started walking quickly down the street. Michael followed at a safe distance, feeling a mix of sadness and curiosity. Emily wasn't heading toward downtown where he had seen her the day before. Instead, she walked through residential streets until she reached a simpler neighborhood with small houses and peeling fences. She stopped in front of a house painted a faded blue, with a garden full of flowers that someone clearly tended with care. The girl knocked on the door 3 times. Michael hid behind a car, watching. The door opened and an elderly woman appeared. Michael recognized that face immediately. It was Ruth, Emily's old nanny. What was Ruth doing there? She had been let go months ago when Jessica lost her job and could no longer afford her services. Michael remembered Emily's sadness when she found out she wouldn't see the woman who had practically raised her since she was a baby anymore. My little flower. Ruth hugged Emily tightly. You came again. I've told you, you don't need to. I wanted to see you, Grandma Ruth. Michael felt his chest tighten. Emily called Ruth Grandma. He kept watching the scene, seeing the joy on his daughter's face, something he hadn't seen in a long time when she was with him or her mother. "Come in, have some juice." "But then you go back to school, you hear?" "I will go back. I always do." Michael waited a few minutes, then approached the house and knocked on the door. Ruth answered and almost jumped back in shock. "Mr. Johnson!" "Ruth, may I come in?" The woman looked back, nervous, but nodded. Inside the simple house, Emily was sitting at the table drinking orange juice. When she saw her father, she froze, the glass in mid-air. "Dad." "Emily, can you explain what you're doing here? Why did you run away from school?" The girl didn't answer, just looked at Ruth with eyes full of tears. The elderly woman sighed and sat down next to the child. "Mr. Johnson, she comes to visit me. I've told her to go back to school, but what?" Michael sat on the other side of the table. "Emily, talk to me, please. I just wanted to see Grandma Ruth." The girl's voice was a whisper. "After Mom sent her away, I missed her so much." Michael looked around the house. It was clean, but things were clearly missing. The old refrigerator made a strange noise, the curtains were patched, and through the slightly open kitchen door he saw nearly empty shelves. "Ruth, are you in need of help?" The woman straightened her shoulders, proud. "I manage. I have my pension." "But yesterday I saw Emily asking for food downtown." Michael looked at his daughter. She had a sign asking for help. Ruth turned pale. She looked at Emily with wide eyes. "You did what?" Emily lowered her head, the tears finally falling. "I saw that your refrigerator was empty. I saw that you'd lost a lot of weight. So I thought I could ask people for food and bring it to you." The silence that fell over the room was heavy. Michael felt a lump in his throat. His 7-year-old daughter was asking for food on the street, not for herself, but for the nanny who raised her. "My girl." Ruth pulled Emily into a hug. "You can't do that, you mustn't." "But you're hungry. I know you are." Michael had to leave the house. He went out onto the porch and took a deep breath, trying to control his emotions. Everything made sense now. Emily wasn't in danger. She wasn't being mistreated. She was trying to take care of someone she loved. When he went back inside, he took out his phone and called Jessica. "I found Emily. You need to come here. I sent you the address." While waiting for his ex-wife to arrive, he sat down next to his daughter and held her small hand. "Emily, do you understand that what you did is dangerous? A child alone on the street could get hurt. Bad things could happen." "I know, Dad, but Grandma Ruth was in need." "Why didn't you tell me or tell your mother?" The girl was silent for a moment. "Mommy is always sad already. She cries at night when she thinks I'm asleep. I didn't want to make her any sadder. And you're always traveling." Each word was a stab to Michael Johnson's heart. He had been so busy providing for the family that he hadn't realized his daughter was carrying a burden she shouldn't have to bear. Jessica arrived half an hour later, out of breath. When she saw Ruth, she froze. "Ruth, you live here?" "I do, Mrs. Jessica." "But I thought—" Jessica looked around, realizing the former employee's situation. "You told me you had found another job." "I lied." Ruth lowered her eyes. "I didn't find anything. At my age, nobody wants to hire me anymore, but I didn't want you to feel guilty. And Emily comes here." Jessica was beginning to understand. "Every day," Michael completed. "She skips school to visit Ruth. And yesterday, I saw her asking for food downtown, food to bring to Ruth." Jessica collapsed into a chair, her hands over her face. Her shoulders shook as she cried. Emily stood up and hugged her mother. "Don't cry, Mommy. I was just helping." "You can't do that, sweetheart. You're a child, you can't be on the street asking for anything. But I can't let Grandma Ruth go hungry." Michael and Jessica exchanged looks. They had raised a girl with such a big heart that she was willing to take risks to help someone she loved. But that couldn't continue. "We're going to fix this," Michael said. "Ruth, you need help, and we are going to help." "I don't need charity," the elderly woman replied firmly. "It's not charity. You took care of our daughter, as if she were your own granddaughter. It's the least we can do. Ruth shook her head. I have my pride, Mr. Michael. I've always managed on my own, and I'll keep managing. The woman's stubbornness was frustrating, but Michael understood. He had grown up in a poor family. He knew what it was like to have pride as the only thing left when you have nothing else. Jessica wiped her tears and looked at her daughter. Emily, I need to tell you something. Mommy lost her job a few months ago. I know, Mommy. You know? I heard you crying about it on the phone. That's why you let Grandma Ruth go, right? Jessica nodded, ashamed. Michael was discovering things he didn't know. Jessica had lost her job and hadn't told him. Why didn't you tell me? He asked. Pride, Jessica admitted. You were working so much, taking long trips to earn more money for Emily's upkeep. I didn't want to seem like a failure. I didn't want you to think I couldn't handle my part. So you hid that you lost your job and cut costs by letting Ruth go. It was the only thing I could do. I couldn't afford to pay her anymore. Emily watched the two adults, trying to understand the conversation. Michael ran his hand through his hair, frustrated. The situation was becoming a snowball. And how are you paying the bills? He asked. Jessica hesitated before answering. I use the alimony money you pay, and I sold some things. What things? The jewelry my mother left me, the porcelain dinner set, some nice clothes I had. Michael felt the weight of the situation fall on him. Jessica was selling off family heirlooms to survive and keep up appearances, and he hadn't noticed anything because he was always on the road. At that moment, Jessica's cell phone rang. It was the principal of the school. Mrs. Jessica, we need to talk about Emily's absences. She can't keep leaving school without authorization. If this continues, I'll be forced to notify the authorities. Jessica turned pale. I'll handle this. It won't happen again. She hung up the phone and looked at her daughter with a mix of love and despair. Did you hear that, Emily? You can't run away from school anymore, understood? But what about Grandma Ruth? We'll find a solution, Michael said, but he had no idea what it would be. They left Ruth's house with Emily between them. The girl was quiet with her head down. Michael took them both back to Jessica's house, a rented home in a middle-class neighborhood. Inside, he looked around and noticed the signs he had ignored before. The living room was empty. Furniture that used to be there was missing. The expensive rug that was in the entryway had disappeared. The walls had stains where pictures had once hung. Did you sell all this? Jessica nodded, unable to look him in the eye. I needed to pay the rent, the school tuition, food. Why didn't you ask me for help? I could have increased the child support. I could have what, Michael? You already work too much. You already spend whole weeks away from our daughter because of these trips. I wasn't going to ask you to work even more, it was true. Michael spent more time in his truck than at home. He had accepted longer and longer routes to earn more money, thinking he was doing what was best for Emily. But what their daughter really needed was presence, not money. Mommy, Emily tugged on Jessica's hand. You're crying again. No, honey, everything's fine. Yes, you are. I hear you crying every night. Last night you were talking to yourself, saying you didn't know how you were going to pay the light bill. Jessica covered her face with her hands. Michael felt an anger growing inside him, but he didn't know at whom. At life? At the circumstances? At himself for being blind to all of it? I'm going to help, he said. I'll increase the child support. I don't need your charity, Jessica replied, echoing Ruth's words. I'll get another job. I'll turn things around. This isn't charity. It's our daughter, Jessica. Exactly. She's our daughter, but the responsibility of raising her seems to be only mine. I work. I pay child support. Money doesn't raise a child, Michael. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like the video and especially to subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. Emily started to cry. Seeing her parents fight was too much for her after everything that had happened. Michael and Jessica stopped immediately, realizing what they were doing. I'm sorry, sweetie. Jessica hugged her daughter. Mommy and Daddy shouldn't have fought in front of you. I just wanted to help Grandma Ruth, Emily sobbed. I didn't want you to fight. Michael knelt down in front of his daughter. It's not your fault, you hear me? None of this is your fault. These are adult problems that we need to solve. But how, Michael didn't know. He left Jessica's house promising they would talk later when they were calmer. On the way home, he called his boss. "Mr. Thompson, I need to cut back on the trips. Stay closer to home. Michael, you're my best driver precisely because you take the long routes. If you start refusing them, I'll have to replace you. But my daughter needs me. Look, I understand, but this is work. Either you take the routes I offer, or I find another driver." Michael hung up angrily. He was trapped. He needed the job to support Emily, but the job kept him away from her. It was a vicious circle. That night, lying in the small bed of his simple home, Michael thought about everything. Emily running away from school to help Ruth, Jessica selling everything to survive, himself working to exhaustion but never being present. He picked up his phone and saw old photos from when they were still a family. Emily as a baby in Ruth's arms, Jessica smiling at a birthday party, himself carrying his daughter on his back on a day at the park. When had everything gotten so complicated? The next day he went back to Ruth's house. He needed to understand the elderly woman's situation better. He knocked on the door and waited. Ruth took a long time to answer, and when she opened the door, Michael saw that she was even thinner than the last time. "Mr. Johnson, what are you doing here? We need to talk. Honestly this time." Ruth let him in. The house was emptier than the day before. Michael noticed things were missing. "Did you sell the television?" "I needed to pay this month's rent." "And what else have you sold?" Ruth sighed, tired of hiding it. "The gas stove. Now I use an old electric hot plate. I sold some clothes I had stored away, my books." "How long can you keep this up?" "I don't know. Another month, maybe 2. Michael sank heavily into a chair. "And after that?" "After that, I'll have to leave here. The landlord wants to raise the rent and I won't be able to pay." "Where will you go?" "I have a cousin out in the country. She said I can stay with her for a while." The idea of Ruth having to leave the city, leave Emily, was too much for Michael. That woman had been more present in his daughter's life than he had been in recent years. "How much is the rent here?" "Mr. Johnson, I won't take your money. I'm not offering. I just want to know." $450. The landlord wants to raise it to $600. Michael did some quick mental math. He could help, but not without sacrificing other things. And he was sure Ruth wouldn't accept charity. He went home thoughtful. In the middle of the afternoon, he got a call from Jessica, her voice tense. "Emily ran away." "What do you mean ran away?" I went to a job interview. I left her with the neighbor. When I got back, the neighbor said she went to the bathroom and never came back." "Did you already check Ruth's house?" "I went there. She's not there." Michael felt panic grip his chest. Where could the girl be? He left the house and went straight to the neighborhood where Jessica lived. They searched the streets together, asking everyone if they had seen a 7-year-old girl. Nothing. An hour passed, then 2. Night was beginning to fall when Michael had an idea. "The park. She must be at the park." "What park?" "The one we used to go to when we were married, remember? Every Sunday we took her there to play." Jessica's eyes widened. It was far, but it was worth a try. They went by car, Michael's heart beating out of rhythm. When they got to Central Park, it was already getting dark. They searched the paths, calling out Emily's name. It was near a pond, sitting on a bench, that they found her. The girl was hugging an old photo album, crying softly. "Emily!" Jessica ran and hugged her daughter tightly. "Are you okay? Are you hurt?" "I'm okay, Mom." Michael arrived out of breath and knelt in front of them. "Why did you run away, sweetheart?" Emily opened the album and showed a photo. It was of the 3 of them together, smiling on a sunny day in that same park. "I wanted to come back here, to remember when we were happy, when we lived together." The words came out so innocent, so honest, that Michael felt tears wet his face. Jessica was also crying, holding her daughter. "We are still happy, sweetie," Jessica said, but her voice faltered. "No, we're not. You cry every night. Dad is never home. I have to go to his house one weekend, and your house the next. I don't have a real home anymore. I don't have a real family anymore." Michael looked at Jessica over Emily's head. He saw in his ex-wife's eyes the same despair he felt. What had they done to this child? "And Grandma Ruth," Emily continued, her voice small. "She's leaving the city, she told me. She's moving to the countryside because she doesn't have the money to stay here." "When did she tell you that?" Jessica asked. "This morning. I went there before going to the neighbor's house. She was crying too. Everybody just cries." The silence that followed was broken only by the girl's sobs. Michael sat down on the bench next to her, Jessica on the other side. The three of them stayed there, looking at the lake where ducks swam peacefully, oblivious to the human drama. "Emily," Michael began, choosing his words carefully, "do you remember when I explained that Mum and Dad separated because it was for the best?" "I remember. You said you didn't love each other anymore, but that you both loved me very much." "That's true. We love you more than anything. And we were wrong about a lot of things. I was wrong to work so much and be away. Your mother was wrong to hide her problems. But can you move back in together?" The question hung in the air. Michael and Jessica looked at each other. There was no romantic love between them anymore. That had ended a long time ago. But there was something greater. The responsibility for that child they had both brought into the world. "We're not going to be husband and wife again," Jessica said, stroking Emily's hair. "But we can be a different kind of family, a family that helps each other." "How?" Michael took a deep breath. A crazy idea had popped into his head, but maybe it was the only solution. "What if we all lived together? You, me, your mother, and Ruth?" Jessica looked at him as if he'd lost his mind. "Michael, we can't." "Why not? My house has 3 bedrooms. It's empty. You and Emily can have one room, Ruth can have another, and I'll take the third. We split the expenses. You don't have to pay rent anymore, and Ruth doesn't have to leave." "People will think it's strange." "So what?" Michael looked at his daughter. "What matters is her, not what other people will think." Emily looked from one to the other, hopeful. "Can Grandma Ruth live with us?" "If she accepts," Jessica said, still hesitant. They went together to Ruth's house. It was almost evening when they knocked on the door. The elderly woman was surprised to see the 3 of them there. Did something happen? "Ruth," Michael got straight to the point, "I want to make a proposal. I want you to come live with me. With us. Mr. Johnson, I already told you I won't accept charity. It's not charity, it's an agreement. You look after Emily while Jessica and I are at work. In return, you get a place to live and food. You've always done that, only now without having to worry about rent and bills." Ruth shook her head. "People will talk. They'll think it's strange, you living with your ex-wife and the nanny. Let them talk." Jessica surprised everyone by saying this. "I'm tired of caring about what other people think. If this is the way to keep my daughter safe and happy, then that's what I'll do." Emily tugged on Ruth's hand. "Come on, Grandma, please." The elderly woman looked at those 3 pleading faces. Michael saw the exact moment her resistance broke. "All right, but on one condition, I pay my share of the expenses with my pension." "Deal." Michael extended his hand. In the following days, they organized the move. Michael's house was simple, but it had enough space. Jessica and Emily took the largest room. Ruth took a medium-sized room. Michael took the smallest one, which he had used as a storage room before. The adjustment wasn't easy. In the first few days, Jessica and Michael barely spoke beyond what was necessary. Ruth's presence helped calm things down, but the tension was palpable. "You two need to have a proper talk," Ruth said one night after Emily had fallen asleep. "Muttering like this doesn't solve anything." The 3 of them sat in the living room. Michael began, "I know it's not ideal, but it's what we have for now." "I just hope it works at least until I can get another job," Jessica said. "Then I'll rent a place for me and Emily. You don't have to leave. The house is big enough." "Michael, we can't go on living like this forever." "Why not?" Ruth interrupted. "Family isn't just husband and wife. Family is about taking care of each other." The elderly woman's words made sense. In the days that followed, a routine began to form. Ruth woke up early and made coffee for everyone. Jessica would drop Emily off at school before heading out for her job interviews. Michael organized his schedule to be present for the important moments. Emily stopped skipping school. Her teacher noticed an improvement in her behavior and her grades. The girl was happier, more focused. Having everyone she loved under one roof had made a difference, but it wasn't all smooth sailing. One night, Michael and Jessica argued about money. She had gotten a job as a sales clerk in a store, but the pay was low. "It won't even be enough to cover my share of the bills," she complained. "Then pay what you can, I'll cover the rest." "I don't want to owe you anything." "Jessica, for heaven's sake, we're living together." "It's not about debt, it's about helping each other out." Emily appeared in the bedroom doorway, frightened by the shouting. Michael and Jessica stopped immediately. "Sorry, sweetie, we were just talking." "Shouting," Emily corrected. "Again." Ruth arrived and led the girl back to her room. When she returned, she looked seriously at the two of them. "You need to stop this. You're doing exactly what you criticized before, fighting in front of the child." She was right. Michael and Jessica apologized to each other and promised to do better. The weeks passed and the dynamic improved. Michael managed to negotiate with his boss to take shorter routes, even though it meant less pay. Jessica dedicated herself to her new job, trying to prove her worth. Ruth took care of the house, and Emily with her usual affection. It was on a Saturday afternoon that everything changed. Michael was fixing a leak under the sink when the phone rang. It was the owner of the property where Ruth used to live. "Mr. Johnson, this is Mr. Wilson. I heard that Mrs. Ruth is living with you now." "That's right. Why?" "Well, you can tell her that I've rented her house out. She still has a few things here that she needs to pick up. I'll let her know." When he told Ruth, the elderly woman was quiet for a moment. "My mother's wardrobe is still there, and some boxes with old photos. We'll go get them on Sunday." On Sunday, Michael, Jessica, Ruth and Emily went to the old house. The new tenant hadn't moved in yet, so they were able to get inside. While Ruth sorted through her things with Jessica's help, Michael and Emily explored the backyard. "Dad, look," Emily pointed to a mango tree. "Grandma Ruth told me she planted this when she was young." "Is that right?" "She said her mother loved mangoes, so she planted it to remember her." Michael looked at the large tree. How many stories did that house hold? How many memories was Ruth leaving behind? When they finished loading the car, Ruth took one last look at the house. "I lived here for 40 years, she said, her voice choked. "I raised my children here. I lost my husband here. I lived my whole life here." Jessica held her hand. "But now you have a new home with us." Ruth smiled, her eyes watery. "You're right. I have a new family." Back at Michael's house, they organized Ruth's things. The old wardrobe was placed in her room. The boxes of photos ended up in the living room, and Emily insisted on looking at every single one. "Who's this?" She pointed to a young man in a black and white photo. "That was your grandfather George, my husband," Ruth explained. "He passed away when I was 35. And you never married again?" "No, I had my children to raise, my job." There was no time left to think about romance. Emily kept flipping through the photos, fascinated by this piece of history. Michael observed, noticing how his daughter was forming stronger and stronger bonds with Ruth. That evening, after Emily fell asleep, the three adults sat in the kitchen to have tea. "You know," Jessica began, "I never properly thanked you, Ruth, for everything you've done for Emily." "No need to thank me. That girl is like a granddaughter to me." "I know. And it was wrong of me to fire you like that. I should have talked to you, explained the situation. You did what you had to do. I understand." Michael listened to the two women talk, feeling something strange in his chest. It wasn't romantic love, it wasn't attraction. It was something deeper, a sense of family, of belonging. "You know what's funny?" he said. "We're living a situation that nobody planned, that doesn't make sense on paper, but it's working." "It's because we're doing it for the right reason," Ruth replied, "for Emily." Weeks turned into months. Jessica got a promotion at work and was able to contribute more to the expenses. Michael had fewer trips and was more present. Ruth took care of the house and became the heart of that unlikely family. Emily started to smile for real again. The nightmares she often had disappeared. Her grades at school improved. The teacher commented to Jessica about the transformation. "I don't know what you did, but Emily is a different child." Dear listener, if you are enjoying the story, please take a moment to like the video and most importantly, subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. But not everything was perfect. One afternoon, Michael came home and found Ruth sitting on the porch, her face etched with worry. "What's wrong?" "My son called. He found out I'm living here." "And what's the problem?" "He didn't like it. He said people will think I'm being taken advantage of, that you're exploiting me." Michael sat down beside her. "Do you feel exploited?" "Of course not. Here I have everything I need. I have Emily, I have the two of you, I have a roof over my head, food. I don't have to worry about whether I'll be able to pay the rent at the end of the month." "Then that's what matters. What your son or anyone else thinks doesn't change the reality." But the words of Ruth's son had planted a seed of doubt, and that doubt grew when, a week later, the man showed up at the door. "Good afternoon. I'm Robert, Mrs. Ruth's son." Michael invited him in. Robert was about 40, well-dressed, with an air of importance. Ruth became nervous when she saw her son there. "Robert? What a surprise. Why didn't you tell me you were coming?" "Because I wanted to see this whole situation with my own eyes." He looked around, judging. "You living with your former employer and her ex-husband. Mom, this isn't right." "Right according to whom?" Michael interjected. "According to common sense. My mother isn't anyone's maid anymore. She's retired. She should be resting." "I take care of the house because I want to," Ruth said firmly. "No one is forcing me to do anything." "But you're living here for free." "It's not for free." Jessica had arrived from work and heard the conversation. "We have an arrangement. Your mother takes care of our daughter and the house, and we take care of her." Robert laughed humorlessly. "An arrangement? How convenient for you, huh?" "Look here." Michael took a step forward. "I respect that you're her son, but I won't accept you coming here and disrespecting us." "I'm not disrespecting anyone. I'm just saying my mother deserves better than being a nanny in exchange for food and a roof." "Robert!" Ruth stood up, angry. "That's enough. I chose to be here. No one forced me." "Mom, you have a house, my house. You can live with me." The silence was heavy. Michael and Jessica exchanged looks. They had never considered that possibility. "You never offered me that before," Ruth said, her voice trembling. "Because before you had your own house, now you don't anymore. So you can come live with me." "What about Emily?" "What about Emily?" "She's not your responsibility, Mum. You've already raised your kids. You've worked your whole life. It's time to rest." Emily had just gotten home from school and was at the door, listening to everything. Michael saw when she started to tremble, her eyes filling with tears. "Is Grandma Ruth leaving?" Her voice was a whisper. Everyone turned to the girl. Ruth went to her and knelt down. "No, my flower. Grandma isn't going anywhere." "Mom," Robert began. "I said I'm not going." Ruth stood up, facing her son. "This is my home now. This is my family. And you have no right to come here and try to change that. You're making a mistake. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make." Robert looked from his mother to Michael, to Jessica, to Emily. He shook his head, disappointed. "Fine. But when you get tired of this, when you realize you're being used, my door is open." He left, slamming the door. Ruth stood still, trembling. Emily ran and hugged her waist. "You're not leaving, right, Grandma?" "No, my beautiful girl. Grandma isn't going." That night, after Emily fell asleep, Ruth sat down with Michael and Jessica. "I'm sorry for what my son said. He's not a bad person, he's just too overprotective." "He's worried about you," Jessica said. "It's understandable." "But is he right?" Ruth looked at the two of them. "Am I being a burden to you?" "You are not a burden at all." Michael was firm. "The house has felt more alive since you arrived. Emily is happy. We're managing to get organized. If this isn't family, I don't know what is." Ruth wiped away a tear. "You have no idea what this means to me. When my husband passed away, I felt lost. I raised my children alone. I worked in many homes. but I never felt like I truly belonged anywhere. Until now. The words touched Michael and Jessica deeply. They had also experienced loss, loneliness, and a feeling of not belonging. "We're building something different here," Jessica said. "It's not a traditional family, but it's our family." The months kept passing. The routine solidified, everyone's roles becoming clearer. Michael reduced his travels even more, accepting a steady job at a logistics company that paid less, but allowed him to be home every day. Jessica got promoted again and now had a stable income. Ruth took care of the house and Emily with a grandmother's dedication. The girl flourished. She made new friends at school, won awards for best student in her class, started taking dance lessons. When people asked about her family, she would say with pride, "I live with my dad, my mom, and my grandma. They aren't married, but they're my family." People found it odd, but Emily didn't care. She had learned that family wasn't about having a mom and dad sleeping in the same room. It was about having people who cared, who were present, who helped each other. It was on a Sunday afternoon, almost a year after that shocking discovery on the street, that Michael had an idea. He called Jessica and Ruth to talk. "I was thinking, we shouldn't continue like this forever." Jessica's eyes widened. "You want us to move out?" "No. I want us to have our own houses, but close by, like a community." "I don't understand." "There are some townhouses for rent nearby. They're two houses side by side with a shared backyard. We could rent them, one for you and Emily, the other for Ruth. I'll stay here in my house, which is also close." Jessica thought about the proposal. It would be good to have our own space again, but without losing the closeness. "Exactly, Emily can go back and forth freely between the houses. We'll still help each other, but everyone will have their privacy." Ruth agreed with the idea. In the following weeks, they arranged everything. The townhouses were perfect, not too big but comfortable. The shared backyard had plenty of space for Emily to play. The move happened on a Saturday. Michael Johnson's friends helped move the furniture. By the end of the day, Jessica and Emily were settled in one house, Ruth in the other. Michael's house was 2 blocks away. "Like it, sweetie?" Jessica asked as Emily explored her new room. "I do. And Grandma Ruth is right next door. Can I go over there all the time?" "You can, but always let someone know first." Emily ran to the low fence that separated the backyards and called out, "Grandma Ruth, come see my room." The elderly woman appeared at the window, smiling. "I'm coming, my dear." Michael watched from a distance, a smile on his face. They had done it. They had created a setup that worked for everyone. The following months brought a new normal. Emily would wake up at Jessica's house, have breakfast at Ruth's, and play in the backyard between the two. On weekends, she would go to Michael's house, but always with the freedom to visit the other two whenever she wanted. The elementary school teacher asked to speak with Michael and Jessica one afternoon. "I wanted to talk about Emily," she began, and they both grew tense. "She wrote an essay about family that really moved me. May I read a part of it?" They agreed, and the teacher read, "My family is different from my friends. My father and my mother don't live together, but they live close by. My Grandma Ruth isn't my grandma by blood, but she is in my heart. I learned that family doesn't have to be like what you see on television. Family is who stays when things get tough. Family is who cries with you, laughs with you, and finds ways to stay together even when it seems impossible. I have 3 houses, but only one family, and I love my family just the way it is." Michael felt his eyes sting. Jessica was crying openly. "Your daughter is special," the teacher said. "She's been through difficult situations, but she's come out stronger and wiser." When they left the school, Michael and Jessica stayed talking in the parking lot. "Did we do the right thing?" she asked. "I think so. Look how well she's doing." "It's strange, isn't it? We broke up because it wasn't working anymore, but now we're closer than ever." "That's because we took off the pressure of having to be husband and wife. Now we're just parents, just friends. It's easier this way." Jessica smiled. "Thank you, Michael, for not giving up, for having this crazy idea of us all living together. Thank you for agreeing to it, and thank Ruth for being the heart of it all." They hugged, not as ex-husband and ex-wife, but as friends who shared the most precious thing in their lives, a daughter. Life went on. Emily turned 8. and the party was in the shared backyard of the houses. Michael grilled the food, Jessica organized the games, and Ruth made the cake. Friends and family came, some still a bit puzzled by the arrangement, but all witnessing the girls' happiness. "Make a wish, sweetie," Jessica said, when it was time to blow out the candles. Emily closed her eyes and whispered something only she could hear. She blew out the candles to everyone's applause. Later, Michael came over. "What did you wish for?" "I can't tell you, or it won't come true. Not even me." Emily thought for a moment, then whispered in his ear, "I wished for us to always stay like this, together, but each in our own place, happy in our own way." Michael felt a tightness in his chest, but it was a good tightness, one of pure emotion. "I think that wish is going to come true, sweetheart." When the party was over and everyone had left, Michael, Jessica, and Ruth sat on the back porch steps, tired but satisfied. "A year ago, if someone had told me we'd be like this, I would have laughed in their face," Jessica said. "Yeah," Michael agreed. "Life takes some strange paths." "But strange isn't always bad," Ruth added. "Sometimes strange is exactly what we need." Emily came out of the house holding a drawing. "Look what I made." It was a drawing of the family. Michael on one side, Jessica on the other, Ruth in the middle, and Emily in front of everyone. 3 houses in the background, but all connected by a colorful path. "It's beautiful, honey," Jessica said. "It's us." Emily pointed to each figure. "My different but complete family." Michael took the drawing and looked at it carefully. There was everything that mattered. Not the traditional structure that society expected, but something built with love, respect, and dedication. "You know what we should do," he said. "Frame this and put it in the living room of each of our houses, so we never forget what we've built." They agreed. They took a picture of the drawing and each kept a copy. Emily was radiant seeing her art being valued. When night fell, each went to their respective home. But before sleeping, Michael stood looking at the framed drawing on the living room wall. He thought about the whole journey they had taken. It started with a scare, seeing his daughter asking for food on the street. It went through painful discoveries. Jessica hiding the loss of her job, Ruth going through hardships, Emily trying to take care of everyone. It continued with difficult decisions, all living together in one house, facing people's judgment, redefining the concept of family. And it arrived there. 3 houses close by, 3 people who chose to be together for the good of a child. A girl who learned that family is about love, not about an address. Michael picked up his phone and created a WhatsApp group with Jessica and Ruth. He wrote, "Good night, family. Thank you for being part of my life and Emily's life. You are my family, in the most beautiful way that family can be." Jessica replied almost immediately, "Good night, Michael. I'm also grateful for everything. You and Ruth are family to me and to Emily." Ruth took a little longer, but when she replied, her words touched them deeply. "My dears, you gave me a new family when I thought I had no one left. Emily is the granddaughter my heart chose. You are the children life gave me by choice, not by blood, and that is worth more than anything." Michael fell asleep with a smile on his face. In the next room, Emily slept hugging the old photo album they had looked through earlier. In Jessica's room, she was planning the future with a lightness she hadn't felt in years. In the house next door, Ruth was praying, thanking God for the family she had found. The years went by. Emily grew up surrounded by this 3-part love. When she turned 12, she wrote another essay that got everyone's attention. "People always ask me if it's hard having separated parents. I tell them no, because my parents never stopped being family. They just changed the way of being a family. I have 3 houses, but only one home. My home is the people who chose to stay together for me, who gave up pride, the judgment of others, what is normal, to do what was right. My father always says that family is a verb, not a noun. It's about doing, not about being. And my family makes it happen every day." The teacher showed the essay to Michael, Jessica, and Ruth at a meeting. "You have raised an incredible girl, and you know what's most beautiful? She doesn't miss what she never had. She celebrates what she has." As they left the school that day, the 3 walked together to the nearby square, and sat on the same bench where years ago they had found Emily crying while hugging a photo album. "Remember that day?" Jessica asked. "How could I forget?" Michael replied. "I thought I had lost her forever." "But we found her," Ruth said. "And more than that, we found each other. We found a way to be a family that no one taught us." Michael looked at the sky, where the sun was beginning to set. "You know what the biggest lesson from all this was? That love doesn't divide, it multiplies. I don't have less love for Emily because Jessica loves her too. Jessica isn't less important because Ruth also cares. We added, we didn't divide. And Emily won," Jessica completed. "She won 3 people dedicated to making her happy and safe." "No," Ruth corrected. "We all won. I gained a family when I thought I would die alone. You gained support when you thought you had to handle everything by yourselves. Emily got what every child deserves, unconditional love. They stayed there until the sun had completely set, 3 people united by a girl and by the choice to do things differently. When Emily turned 15, the family WhatsApp group had over 50,000 messages. There were daily good mornings, photos of small moments, venting, requests for help, celebrations. It was living proof that family doesn't need to live together to be together. One afternoon, Emily came home from school with some news. "My teacher asked me to give a talk about different kinds of families." "Did you agree?" Jessica asked. "I did, but I want all 3 of you to be there." On the day of the talk, Michael, Jessica, and Ruth were in the front row. Emily stepped onto the small school stage, confident. "Good afternoon. My name is Emily and I'm here to talk about my family, which is different from anything you know but which works perfectly." She told the story from the beginning, from when she used to skip school to help Ruth, from when her parents found her lost in the park, from the decision for them all to live together, from the criticism they received, from the adaptations they made, and from how, in the end, they created something that was just theirs. What I want to say is, family doesn't have just one shape. There are families with 2 dads, families with 2 moms, families with grandparents raising grandchildren, families with separated parents who are still united. There are all kinds of families, and they are all valid if they have love, respect, and presence. The students applauded. Several teachers were moved. Michael looked at Jessica and saw tears in her eyes. Ruth was squeezing both their hands, also crying. After the talk, several people came to speak with them. "How do you manage it?" one mother asked. "My ex and I can barely talk without fighting." "It wasn't easy," Jessica admitted. "We had to swallow a lot of pride, accept a lot of things that weren't ideal. But in the end, the question was always, what is best for our daughter?" "And you never wanted to go back?" another person asked. Michael and Jessica looked at each other and smiled. "No," they said together. "We love each other," Michael explained, "but not in that romantic way. We love each other as family, and family supports each other, respects each other, but doesn't need to be together at all costs." An older gentleman approached, his eyes watery. "You've given me hope. My wife and I are separating, but we have a young son. We're desperate trying to make it work." Ruth was the one who answered, "Separation isn't failure. It's recognizing that the love has changed form, but hasn't ended. You may not be husband and wife anymore, but you will always be parents, and that is stronger than anything else." That evening at Michael's house, the 3 of them had dinner together while Emily did her homework. They talked about simple things, work, bills, plans for the weekend. "Do you think we should write a book?" Michael joked. "A manual on how to be a family the wrong way that works." Everyone laughed. "There's no wrong way," Ruth said. "There's only the way that works for each person." Emily appeared in the living room. "Dad, can I sleep here tonight?" "Of course. But wasn't today your day to stay with Mom?" "It was, but I wanted to stay with you today. I'll go back tomorrow." Jessica wasn't offended. She had learned that Emily needed this flexibility, this freedom to choose where she wanted to be at any given moment. "That's fine, sweetie. We'll see you tomorrow." After Emily went to sleep, Jessica got ready to leave. At the door, she hugged Michael. "We did the right thing, didn't we?" "We did. Look how well she's doing." "Not just her. We're all doing well. Ruth also got ready to go, but first she hugged them both. You changed my life. You saved my life. We saved each other, Michael said. That night, lying in bed, Michael thought about how life had taken so many turns. If someone had told him years ago that this would be his life, he wouldn't have believed it. But there he was, with a happy daughter, an ex-wife who was a true friend, and a woman who had become an essential part of the family. And it all started with a shock, seeing Emily asking for food on the street. Sometimes, Michael thought, the worst moments in life are doors to the best paths. We just need the courage to walk through them. The years continued their march. Emily graduated from high school with honors. She was accepted into a public university and chose to study social work. I want to help families like ours, she explained to the three of them. Families that don't fit the standard, but that work. I want to show the world that there's more than one way to love. Michael couldn't have been prouder, Jessica cried with emotion. Ruth, now with completely white hair, hugged her granddaughter from the heart. You're going to change the world, my beautiful girl. During university, Emily lived in a shared house, but she always returned to the three homes. No matter where she studied or worked, that would always be her home. On one of these visits, she brought a boyfriend, a kind young man named Jason who studied psychology. At dinner, he observed the family's dynamic with fascination. This is incredible, he said. You've reinvented the concept of family. We just did what we needed to do, Michael replied. Nothing revolutionary. But it is. How many families fall apart and become enemies? How many children grow up divided, being used as weapons? You've shown that it's possible to do things differently. Emily smiled, proud. She had chosen someone who understood her family. Ruth, at 75 years old, still took care of the houses with vigor. But one day she felt a pain in her chest and was taken to the hospital. The diagnosis was a minor heart problem, nothing serious, but it required care. Michael, Jessica, and Emily took turns at the hospital. Ruth, even while weakened, tried to calm them. I'm fine, I just need some little pills. You need to rest more, Jessica insisted. Stop doing everything by yourself. But who will take care of the houses? We will, Emily said. It's time for us to take care of you the way you always took care of us. In the following months, the roles reversed. Ruth reluctantly accepted, letting the others do more. Michael took on most of the cleaning. Jessica did the cooking. Emily, even with university, always came to help. You don't have to do this, Ruth would say. Yes, we do, Michael would respond. Family takes care of family. It was during this time that Robert, Ruth's son, reappeared. He had heard about his mother's health problem and came to visit. Mom, you need specialized care. You can come live with me. Robert, we've had this conversation before, but now it's different. You're sick. And I'm being taken care of by my family. Robert looked at Michael, Jessica, and Emily, who were all there. Look, I came here to fight, he admitted. I came to take my mother away by force if necessary, but... He paused, emotional. But seeing you all here, taking care of her, I realize I was wrong. What do you mean? Ruth asked. I thought you were using her, but you're not. You really love her. You take care of her. You are her family. We always have been, Emily said softly. Robert sat down, defeated. I'm her son by blood, but I was a terrible son. I barely visited. I barely called. I was more worried about what other people thought than about what she needed. You can change that, Michael offered. You can start now. And Robert started. He began to visit Ruth regularly, to call frequently, to make himself present. Surprisingly, he got along well with Michael, Jessica, and Emily. He even brought his wife and children to meet that unusual family. You are an example, Robert's wife said. You show that love is stronger than social rules. Ruth recovered completely. At 76 years old, she went back to looking after the houses, but now with everyone's help. It was no longer a burden for her alone. Emily graduated from university with honors. She got a job at an organization that worked with vulnerable families. Her work was to show that there were different family arrangements, all of them valid. I tell the story of our family, she said at a celebratory dinner, and people are moved. They realize they don't have to follow the standard to be happy. Our story helping other families, Jessica said, touched. I never imagined that. Well, Michael agreed, we were just trying to survive, but we ended up creating something that inspires. Ruth, always wise, added, the best lessons come from difficulties. We learned to be a family in the worst circumstances, and that made everything stronger. When Emily turned 25, she gathered Michael, Jessica, and Ruth for an announcement. Jason and I are getting married. There were shouts of joy, hugs, and tears of happiness. And I want the three of you to walk me down the aisle. What do you mean? Michael asked. The three of you raised me. The three of you are my family. I want all three of you to give me away to Jason. On the wedding day, that's exactly what happened. Michael on one side, Jessica on the other, Ruth in the middle, the three of them walking with Emily down the church aisle. People commented, found it unusual, but no one could deny the emotion of that moment. Who gives this bride away? The priest asked. We three do, they answered in unison. Jason received Emily with tears in his eyes. He had learned from that family that love comes in all forms, and he was ready to build his own family with those values. In her wedding speech, Emily gave thanks. I could have grown up resentful for having separated parents. I could have felt abandoned. But I didn't, because my parents showed me that separation is not abandonment, that family isn't about living together, but about being together. I thank my father, my mother, and my grandmother Ruth for having the courage to do things differently, for ignoring what others thought and building a family based on love, not rules. There wasn't a dry eye in the hall. That night, after the party, Michael, Jessica, and Ruth sat on the steps of the empty church. We did it, Michael said. We raised an incredible woman. Who is going to make a difference in the world? Jessica added. And who learned that love has no single shape? Ruth concluded. They stayed there. Three people that life had brought together in an unlikely way, but which worked perfectly. Years passed. Emily had 2 children. Michael, Jessica, and Ruth became grandparents, or great-grandparents, in Ruth's case. The children grew up going back and forth between the 3 houses, just as Emily had done. Grandpa, why don't you and Grandma Jessica live together? The oldest grandson asked one day. Because we love each other in a different way, champ. We are family, but each in our own space. And is that bad? No, it's different. And different isn't bad, it's just different. The child accepted it naturally, just as Emily had accepted it years before. Ruth, at 85 years old, began to grow more frail. She couldn't look after the houses like before. It was Emily who suggested, Grandma Ruth needs more care. How about she comes to live with us? Michael and Jessica agreed. Ruth moved into Emily and Jason's house, where she could be near her great-grandchildren and receive the necessary care. I'm becoming a burden, she would say. Never, Emily would answer. You are the heart of this family. Without you, none of this would exist. On a quiet afternoon, with Ruth already quite elderly, the 3 of them gathered in Emily's backyard. The children were playing nearby, Jason was tending to the barbecue, and Emily was setting the table. Look at this, Ruth said, pointing to the scene. We created a dynasty. A dynasty of love, Michael Johnson corrected. Based on breaking rules, Jessica added. No, we didn't break rules, Ruth disagreed. We created our own rules, and it worked. It was true, they had created their own model of a family, and it was multiplying. Emily and Jason were raising their children with the same philosophy. Love above all, presence above appearances, unity above conventions. Ruth passed away at 88, dying peacefully in her sleep on a Sunday afternoon. She was surrounded by love, Emily by her side, Michael Johnson and Jessica close by, her great-grandchildren playing in the yard. At the funeral, Michael Johnson said, Ruth wasn't my birth mother, but she was my family in my heart. She taught me that family is something you choose with your actions, not with DNA. Jessica added, She saved our daughter. She saved our family. She saved us. Emily, crying, finished, She was the glue that held us together, the wisdom that guided us, the love that sustained us. Grandma Ruth taught me that family is a verb, it's action, it's a choice. And I will teach that to my children, to their children, to the generations to come. After the funeral, Michael Johnson and Jessica walked together to the park where, decades earlier, they had found Emily crying with a photo album. "It feels like yesterday," Jessica said. "But it was a whole lifetime," Michael Johnson replied. "Do you regret anything?" Michael Johnson thought before answering. "No, not even the separation, because it led us to build something better. Not even the difficulties, because they made us stronger. We did the best we could with what we had. And it worked. It worked very well." They sat on the same bench where they had found Emily. The park was full of families, traditional, single-parent, same-sex parents, all different, all valid. "You know what I think is most beautiful," Jessica said. "It's that we didn't create a model for others to follow. We created our own model, and every family should create its own." "Exactly. There's no recipe. There's love, respect, presence. We invent the rest." They stayed there until the sun began to set. Two old friends who were once husband and wife, who raised an incredible daughter, who built a unique family. When they got up to leave, Michael Johnson looked back one last time. "Thank you, Ruth," he whispered to the wind, "for everything." Jessica took his hand and squeezed it, not as lovers but as accomplices on an extraordinary journey. Emily was waiting for them at the park exit with the children. Seeing the three of them together, grandfather, grandmother, and great-grandchildren, filled Michael Johnson's heart with gratitude. "Shall we go home?" Emily asked. "Let's go," Michael Johnson replied. "To which home?" "To our home," Emily smiled. "All of them." And they went. 3 generations walking together, each with their own story, but all united by a simple truth. Family is what you make it. That night, Michael Johnson wrote in the journal he had started years ago, "Today we buried Ruth. Today we closed a cycle. But we also celebrated a life that taught us everything. She showed us that family has no set form, that love is greater than blood, that the right choices sometimes seem wrong in the eyes of others, but are right for the heart." Emily is raising her children with these values. "One day when I am gone, I know this legacy will continue, not the legacy of my blood, but the legacy of our choices. It started with a scare, seeing my daughter begging for food on the street. It ends with the certainty. We built something that will last for generations to come, and all because we decided that our daughter's love was worth more than our pride, that being present was worth more than being right, that being a family was worth more than looking like a family. Thank you, Ruth, for being the first to understand this. Thank you, Jessica, for going along with this crazy idea. Thank you, Emily, for teaching us what really matters. And thank you, life, for giving us this chance to do things differently." Robert closed the diary and looked out the window. In the houses next door, the lights were on. Jessica was probably watching her soap opera. Emily was putting the children to bed. Everyone close, everyone together in their own way. He smiled. It had been a long, difficult, but incredibly beautiful journey, and it had all been worth it. End of story. Now tell me, what did you think of this story? Do you know any families that are different but still work? Have you been through something similar? Leave a comment sharing your experience with us. And if you believe that love is more important than conventions, leave your like. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, so you don't miss other moving stories that show life is more beautiful when we have the courage to do things differently. Your opinion is very important to us.